My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I'm 42 years old. I have warm brown skin, dark curly hair that falls just past my shoulders, and eyes that my mother always said showed too much of what I was feeling. That vulnerability, it nearly cost me everything one frozen February night. I'd been married to Marcus for 15 years. Marcus was a successful architect, tall and confident, with the kind of smile that made people trust him instantly. We lived in a comfortable suburban home in Ohio, the kind with a wraparound porch and neighbors who knew your name. My mother-in-law, Patricia, lived with us. She was 73, with silver hair she wore in an elegant updo, and deep brown skin that held the stories of 7 decades. Patricia had kind eyes, but there was steel underneath that kindness. She wore a teal coat that winter, one she'd owned for 20 years because, as she said, quality never goes out of style. That February evening started like any other disagreement. Marcus came home late again, smelling of perfume that wasn't mine. When I confronted him, his face twisted with an anger and never seen before. "You're imagining things," he shouted, his voice echoing through our home. "You're paranoid, Sarah. Always checking up on me. Always suspicious." "I found text messages," I said quietly, my voice shaking. "Messages from someone named Victoria. Your assistant." His expression changed then. The mask slipped. "So what if I am?" he said coldly. "Maybe if you were more like her, I wouldn't need to look elsewhere." The words hit me like a physical blow. Tears streamed down my face as I stood there in our kitchen, wearing only my pink nightgown. It was thin cotton, meant for sleeping, not for protection against betrayal or the cold. "I want you to leave," I whispered. "Get out of my house." That's when Marcus lost control completely. "Your house?" he screamed. "I paid for this house. You want me out? Then you get out." Before I could process what was happening, he grabbed my arm and pushed me toward the front door. I was too shocked to resist. The door opened, letting in a blast of winter air, and then I was standing on the front porch. The lock clicked behind me. The cold hit me immediately. Snow was falling, thick and heavy, accumulating on the ground in white drifts. The temperature had dropped to 15 degrees. I hugged myself, shivering, my bare feet already going numb on the icy wood of the porch. I pounded on the door. "Marcus, let me in, please." My voice cracked with desperation and cold. "It's freezing out here." His voice came through the door, muffled but clear. "Then go to your parents. Hope you don't freeze." I could hear the cruelty in his laugh. Panic set in. My parents lived 40 minutes away. I had no phone, no coat, no shoes, just a nightgown and the bitter winter night. I tried the door again, then moved to the window, thinking I might have to break it just to survive. That's when I heard her voice. "Sarah, honey, come here. Quickly now, Mrs. Eleanor Chen." Stood on her porch next door, bundled in a thick robe, her elderly face creased with concern. She was 81 years old, a widow who lived in that house for 50 years. Her son, David, stood behind her, his eyes wide with shock at what he was witnessing. I stumbled through the snow to her porch, my feet burning with cold, my whole body shaking violently. Eleanor wrapped me in a heavy blanket the moment I reached her, pulling me into her warm home. "David, get the guest room ready," she said firmly. "Sarah, sit by the fire. We need to get you warm." As I sat shivering by her fireplace, wrapped in blankets, Eleanor brought me hot tea. David returned, with warm socks and a sweatshirt. He was 38, with gentle eyes and graying temples, dressed in comfortable home clothes. He worked from home as a software developer, which is why he was there visiting his mother that evening. "What Marcus did," Eleanor said, her voice trembling with suppressed anger. "That's not just cruel. That's dangerous. You could have died out there, Sarah." I started crying then, really crying. Not just from the cold or the fear, but from the humiliation of it all. "He's having an affair," I sobbed. And when I confronted him, he threw me out like garbage. David sat down across from me, his expression serious. "Sarah, I don't know if you remember, but Marcus actually works for me. He's an architect at my firm. I'm his boss." I stared at him, processing this information. I'd known David owned a successful architecture firm, but I hadn't connected it to Marcus's work. They left for work at different times, came home at different hours. There's something you should know, David continued carefully. I've been documenting some concerns about Marcus's conduct at work. He's been inappropriate with Victoria, one of our junior staff. She's filed complaints. I've been building a case to terminate his employment, but I needed proper documentation. Eleanor placed a wrinkled hand on mine. Tomorrow, we help you, she said firmly. Tonight, you rest. You're safe here. I spent that night in Eleanor's guest room, warm and safe, but unable to sleep. I kept thinking about my marriage, about all the signs I'd ignored, all the times Marcus had made me feel small or crazy for questioning him. The next morning, Patricia called Eleanor's house. Sarah, thank God. Marcus told me you'd gone to your parents. I just spoke to them, and they said you weren't there. Where are you? When I explained what happened, there was a long silence. Then, pack your bags, Sarah. I'm coming to get you. We're going to the police, and then we're going to a lawyer. And Marcus is going to learn that you don't treat people like this. Patricia arrived within the hour, still wearing that teal coat, her face set with determination. But before we left, David asked to speak with me privately. I want you to know something, he said. What I witnessed last night, that was attempted harm. In this weather, being locked out like that could have killed you. I've already called the police and filed a report as a witness. But I also want you to know that Marcus's employment with my firm is terminated effective immediately. Not just for what he did to you, but for the harassment Victoria has endured. Thank you, I whispered, tears forming again. But won't that make things worse? He'll blame me. David shook his head. He would have been fired anyway this week. The documentation was complete. What happened last night just made the timeline move faster. And Sarah, you deserve better than this. You always have. The next weeks were a blur. Patricia moved out of the house she'd shared with Marcus and me, coming to stay with my parents and me instead. He's my son, she told Marcus over the phone while I listened. But what you did was unforgivable. You could have killed your wife. You betrayed her trust, and you betrayed every value I tried to teach you. The police pressed charges. The photo someone had taken of me, shivering on that porch in the snow, became evidence. Marcus tried to claim it was a misunderstanding, that I'd gone outside voluntarily, but David's eyewitness testimony contradicted that story. The divorce moved quickly. Marcus's affair was documented. The endangerment charges were pending. His termination from David's firm meant he couldn't afford the aggressive legal team he'd threatened me with. But the real revenge, that came quietly, over time. Victoria, Marcus's former assistant, filed a lawsuit against him personally for harassment. Other women came forward with similar stories. Marcus's reputation in the architecture community collapsed. The man who'd once been so confident, so sure of his superiority, found himself unemployed and unemployable. I, meanwhile, began to rebuild. Patricia and I grew closer than we'd ever been. She told me stories of her own marriage, of times she'd had to be strong, of wisdom earned through hard years. Sometimes, she said one evening as we sat together, the people we love most are the ones who disappoint us deepest. But that disappointment doesn't define us. How we rise from it does. David and I began spending more time together. It started innocently, with him checking in to make sure I was okay, offering legal advice, helping me understand the financial aspects of the divorce. But somewhere along the way, friendship became something more. He was patient, kind. He never pushed. I'm not trying to be Marcus's replacement, he told me one spring afternoon as we walked through a park. I see you, Sarah. I see how strong you are, how kind. I'd like to get to know you better, if you're willing. A year later, I stood in that same park, wearing a simple white dress, surrounded by friends and family. Patricia stood beside me, tears of joy in her eyes. Eleanor sat in the front row, beaming, and David stood at the end of a flower-lined path, waiting for me with the kind of love I'd once thought was just a fairy tale. Marcus sent a letter. I never opened it. Some chapters close completely. As I walked down that aisle, I thought about That frozen February night. How close I'd come to tragedy. How one act of cruelty had paradoxically led me to discover my own strength, and eventually, to find real love. The betrayal had broken me. The kindness of neighbors had saved me. And the journey between those two moments had taught me something I'd never forget. That we are never as powerless as we feel in our darkest moments. And that sometimes, the worst night of your life is actually the first step toward your best life. Patricia squeezed my hand as I passed her. "Proud of you, sweetheart," she whispered. I squeezed back, my heart full and future bright, and I never looked back.